The hospital corridor stretched before Clara like a never-ending tunnel, its sterile white walls a stark contrast to the colorful bouquets clutched in her small hands. At 9 years old, she already understood the weight of responsibility, the heaviness of worry that settled in her chest each morning as she woke before dawn. Every day followed the same routine. Clara would slip out of Aunt Meredith's apartment while the city was still sleeping, make her way to the abandoned railway tracks where wildflowers grew in abundance, and carefully pick the brightest blooms she could find. She wrapped them in yesterday's newspaper, securing each bundle with twine she'd collected from the grocery store dumpster. The bus driver, Mr. Jenkins, had stopped charging her the fare weeks ago. "Morning, flower girl." He'd greet her with a sad smile. He knew where she was headed. Everyone did in their small Connecticut town. Clara's mother, Anna, had been admitted to Fairview Medical Center 3 months ago. What started as persistent fatigue had quickly revealed itself as something far more sinister. Clara didn't understand all the medical terms the doctors used, but she caught enough: aggressive treatment options, financial assistance programs. Money. It always came back to money. "Third floor today, sweetheart," said Nancy, the receptionist who had taken to saving apple juice boxes for Clara. "Your mom's been moved to a different wing." Clara nodded, clutching her bouquets tighter as she entered the elevator. The doors closed with a soft ping, and she watched the numbers illuminate. 1, 2, 3. When they opened again, she straightened her second-hand jacket and walked out with as much dignity as her worn sneakers could carry. People rushed past her, doctors with clipboards, visitors with proper store-bought flowers and balloons, nurses pushing rattling carts. Most averted their eyes when they saw her. A few regulars would smile or drop coins into the small tin can she kept in her backpack. Clara had learned to be almost invisible, standing against the wall with her newspaper-wrapped offerings. "Flowers for someone you love?" she would ask softly when someone looked her way. Sometimes they bought out of pity, sometimes out of genuine appreciation for the wildflower's simple beauty. Every dollar, every quarter, every dime went into the jar labeled Mom's Medicine that she kept hidden under her bed at Aunt Meredith's place. That Wednesday afternoon, rain had started falling by the time Clara reached the hospital. Her last bouquet, a collection of purple asters and white daisies, was slightly wilted, the newspaper wrapping damp and starting to tear. Her shoes squeaked against the polished floor as she took her usual position near the elevator. The clock on the wall showed 4:30 p.m. when the elevator doors opened, and a man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit stepped out. Everything about him spoke of money, from his polished Oxfords to his expensive watch. Clara had seen his type before. They rarely stopped, rarely even looked at her. "Flowers for someone you love?" she asked anyway, her voice almost a whisper, already expecting him to walk past. But he didn't. The man stopped abruptly, as if her words had physically halted him. He turned slowly, taking in the sight of her, soaked from the rain, shivering slightly, holding out the drooping bouquet with an expression of fierce determination. "How much?" he asked, his voice deep and cultured. "Whatever you can give," Clara responded, the answer she always gave. The man studied her for a moment longer, his brow furrowed as if trying to solve a puzzle. Then he reached into his wallet and handed her a $20 bill, far more than anyone had ever paid for one of her bouquets. "Thank you, sir," she said, eyes wide at his generosity. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. Most people took their flowers and left without wanting to know anything about the small girl selling them. "Clara," she answered hesitantly. "Clara Montrose." The effect of her name was immediate and shocking. The man's face drained of color, and he took a half step backward as if he'd been struck. His eyes, gray like a winter sky, widened, and his lips parted slightly. For a moment, Clara thought he might be having some kind of medical emergency. "Montrose," he repeated, the word barely audible. Then, without another word, he took the bouquet from her hands and walked away quickly, leaving Clara staring after him in confusion. It wasn't until he disappeared around the corner that she noticed he'd left not a 20, but a $50 bill on the bench beside her. Clara stood frozen, rain dripping from her hair, the $50 bill clutched in her hand like a talisman. It was more money than she had ever held at once. More importantly, it was enough for her mother's pain medication for the next week. Later that evening, sitting beside her mother's hospital bed, Clara recounted the strange encounter. Anna Montrose had been dozing, her face thin and pale against the stark white pillow, but at the mention of the man's reaction to their name, her eyes flew open. "What did he look like?" she asked, her voice strained. Clara described him. Tall, with dark hair graying at the temples, expensive clothes, and those striking gray eyes that had looked at her with such shock. Her mother's hand trembled as she reached for Clara's. "He wasn't supposed to know," she whispered. "I prayed he'd never find out." "Who, Mom? Who wasn't supposed to know what?" Anna turned her face away, but not before Clara caught sight of the tears sliding down her hollow cheeks. "Montrose, I never wanted him to know about you." Clara sat perfectly still, her heart hammering in her chest. In that moment, the hospital room seemed to shrink around them, and the rain tapping against the window grew louder. Her mother's tears and the man's shocked expression suddenly connected in her mind like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving. "Mom," she said quietly, "who was that man?" Her mother's silence was answer enough. Clara felt the world shift beneath her, everything she thought she knew about herself suddenly uncertain. The bouquet of wildflowers she'd brought for her mother that morning lay on the bedside table, a reminder of how quickly life could change, with just a name and a chance encounter in a hospital corridor. Sleep eluded Clara that night. She tossed and turned on the pull-out couch in Aunt Meredith's cramped living room, her mind racing with questions. The $50 bill lay hidden in her sock drawer, but its presence loomed large in her thoughts. Who was this man? Why had her name affected him so deeply? And what did her mother mean when she said she'd prayed he'd never know? Morning came with no answers, only a determination to learn the truth. Clara performed her usual ritual, collecting flowers, wrapping them carefully, taking the bus to the hospital. But today her heart wasn't in it. She kept scanning the hospital corridors, hoping the man in the suit would return. By afternoon, her hope had dimmed. She sold a few bouquets to regular customers. Mrs. Peterson, who visited her husband in oncology, Dr. Rivera, who bought one every Thursday for the nurse's station, but her eyes kept darting to the elevator doors. At 4:15, just as she was about to give up, the elevator chimed. The doors slid open, and there he was, the same immaculate suit, the same polished shoes, but today his face looked different. There was purpose in his expression, a determination that matched Clara's own. He walked directly toward her, no hesitation in his stride. Clara stood straighter, gripping her last bouquet like a shield. "Hello again," he said, his voice controlled but tense. "I believe we have something to discuss." Clara swallowed hard. "About my name?" A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Yes, about your name." He glanced around the busy corridor. "Is there somewhere more private we could talk?" "The garden," Clara suggested. "Behind the hospital. No one really goes there except some patients sometimes." He nodded once, and Clara led him through the maze of corridors to the small courtyard garden the hospital maintained for patients who were well enough to enjoy fresh air. Today it was empty, the recent rain having left the benches damp and uninviting. They stood beneath the shelter of a small gazebo, the man maintaining a careful distance from Clara, as if she were something fragile or dangerous, she couldn't tell which. "My name is Alexander Montrose," he said finally, "and I need to know, who is your mother?" "Anna," Clara answered. "Anna Montrose." The name hit him like a physical blow. He closed his eyes briefly, his composure slipping for just a moment before he regained control. "Anna," he repeated softly. "I should have known she would keep the name." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" "It's our name." Alexander looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. His gray eyes, so similar in shape to her own, searched her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "How old are you, Clara?" 9. Almost 10. He did the math in his head, his expression shifting from suspicion to realization to something like wonder mixed with grief. "And your father? What do you know about him?" Clara lifted her chin. "Nothing. Mom says he left before I was born, that he didn't want us." Alexander flinched at that, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. "That's not," he began, then stopped himself. "It's more complicated than that." "Then uncomplicated," Clara demanded, surprising herself with her boldness. "Who are you to my mom? Why did seeing me make you so upset yesterday?" He ran a hand through his hair, another gesture Clara recognized from her own habits. "I knew your mother a long time ago. We were close." "You're him, aren't you?" Clara whispered, the truth dawning on her with absolute clarity. "You're my father." Alexander didn't confirm or deny it. Instead, he asked, "How is she? Your mother?" "She's dying," Clara said bluntly, watching his face pale at her words. "Cancer. Stage 4. That's why I sell the flowers, to help pay for her medicine. The insurance doesn't cover everything, and Aunt Meredith doesn't make much at the diner." He seemed to age 10 years in that moment, the lines around his eyes deepening. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know about any of this." "How could you not know?" Clara challenged, anger suddenly flaring. "She has the same name. We're in the same town. Did you even look for her after you left?" "I didn't leave," he said, his voice hardening. "She disappeared. One day she was there. The next she was gone. No note, no explanation. My father told me she'd taken money to stay away from me, that she'd never loved me. I spent years trying to find her, but she'd vanished completely." Clara's certainty wavered. This didn't match the story her mother had told her. "That's not true. She said you didn't want us." Alexander shook his head. "I never even knew you existed until yesterday." They stood in silence, the weight of 10 years of misunderstandings and secrets hanging between them. In the distance, a hospital PA system called for a doctor. The ordinary sound seemed out of place in this moment that was changing Clara's world forever. "I want to see her," Alexander said finally. Clara hesitated. "She might not want to see you. I understand that. But I need to see her anyway." Clara considered this, studying the man who might be her father. Despite her reservations, she found herself nodding. "Room 317. But don't upset her. She's not strong right now." "I won't upset her," he promised. "And Clara," he reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, offering it to her. "If you need anything at all, call this number. Day or night." Clara took the card, reading the embossed letters. Alexander Montrose, CEO, Montrose Development Group. An address in downtown Hartford, a phone number with the local area code. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, tucking the card into her pocket nonetheless. Alexander's expression softened. "Because despite what you've been told, and despite what your mother might believe, I have never stopped loving Anna. And if I had known about you," his voice broke slightly, "if I had known I had a daughter, nothing in this world would have kept me away." Clara wanted to believe him. Part of her already did. But 9 years of growing up without a father had taught her caution. "I'll let my mom decide," she said finally. Alexander nodded, accepting her terms. "That's fair." He glanced toward the hospital building. "I should go see her now, before I lose my nerve." "I'll come with you," Clara said quickly. "Just don't tell her I brought you. Let her think you found her on your own." He studied her face, noting the stubborn set of her jaw, so like his own, and agreed. They walked back into the hospital together, an unlikely pair, the wealthy businessman and the small flower girl, connected by blood and separated by years of silence. As they rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, Clara stole glances at the man beside her. His profile was strong, his posture rigid with tension. Was this really her father? The man whose absence had shaped her entire life? The man whose features she might carry in her own face? The elevator doors opened, and Clara led him down the corridor toward room 317. Outside her mother's door, she stopped. "I'll wait here," she said, suddenly uncertain. Alexander nodded, taking a deep breath before knocking gently on the door. A weak voice called, "Come in." He pushed the door open, stepping into the room. Clara edged closer, peering through the narrow gap as the door slowly closed behind him. She caught just a glimpse of her mother's face. The shock, the disbelief, the flood of emotion that washed over her features as she recognized the visitor. "Alex," her mother whispered, the name falling from her lips like a prayer or a curse. The door clicked shut, leaving Clara alone in the corridor, her heart pounding as she realized that whatever happened next would change her life forever. The name that had shaken Alexander Montrose to his core yesterday had now set in motion events that couldn't be undone. Clara Montrose, a name that connected her to a father she never knew existed and a past her mother had tried desperately to keep buried. Clara sat on the hard plastic chair outside her mother's room. Time crawling by so slowly, she checked the wall clock twice to make sure it hadn't stopped. Muffled voices drifted through the door, sometimes rising in intensity, sometimes dropping so low she couldn't make out the words. Once, she thought she heard her mother crying. After nearly 40 minutes, the door finally opened. Alexander emerged, his face a complicated mask of emotions. He looked drained, as if the conversation had taken every ounce of energy he possessed. "She wants to see you," he told Clara, his voice rough. "I'll be in the cafeteria. Take your time." Clara slipped into the room, finding her mother sitting up in bed, tissues clutched in one hand. Anna's eyes were red-rimmed, but there was a strange light in them, something Clara hadn't seen in months. "Mom, are you okay?" Anna patted the edge of the bed. "Come sit with me, sweetheart. We need to talk." Clara perched beside her mother, anxiety knotting her stomach. "Is he really my father?" Anna nodded slowly. "Yes, that's Alexander Montrose. Your father. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why did you say he abandoned us?" Her mother sighed, the sound weary and laden with regret. "Because I thought that's what he did. I thought he knew about you and chose his family's fortune over us. I was wrong, Clara. I've been wrong for almost 10 years. Tell me everything," Clara demanded. "I deserve to know." Anna reached for the water glass on her nightstand, taking a small sip before beginning. "I met Alex when I was working as a receptionist at Montrose Tower in Hartford. He'd just finished business school and was learning the family business from his father, Richard Montrose." She paused, lost momentarily in the memory. "He wasn't like the other executives. He was kind, funny. He noticed me when no one else did." "And you fell in love?" Clara prompted. A sad smile touched Anna's lips. "We both did. We kept it secret at first. Office romances were frowned upon, especially between an executive and a receptionist. But eventually, we couldn't hide it anymore. We were planning a future together." "What happened?" "Richard Montrose happened." Anna's expression hardened. "When he found out about us, he was furious. The Montroses are old money in Connecticut. They trace their fortune back generations. They have a certain standard for who belongs in their family, and a receptionist from Bridgeport wasn't it." Clara frowned. "But it was my father's choice, not his dad's." "I thought so too." Anna took another sip of water. "One night, Richard called me to his office. He told me Alex was engaged to someone else, the daughter of another wealthy family. He showed me the announcement that would run in the Hartford Courant the next day. Then he offered me $50,000 to disappear. Did you take it?" Clara asked, her voice small. "No," Anna said firmly. "I refused his money. I told him I was going to tell Alex everything. That's when he threatened me." "Threatened you how?" "He said if I didn't leave quietly, he would make sure I never worked in Connecticut again, that he would ruin me." She paused, her gaze distant. "And then he told me Alex had known about the arrangement all along, that it had been Alex's idea to pay me off." Clara gasped. "But that wasn't true." "I know that now." Anna closed her eyes briefly. "But I believed it then. I was young, scared, and heartbroken, and I had just found out I was pregnant with you. I thought Alex had betrayed me completely." "So you ran?" "Yes. I packed up my apartment that night and left. My sister Meredith lived in this town. It was far enough away that I didn't think the Montroses would find me. I changed my phone number, deleted my email account. But I kept the name." "Why?" Clara asked. "Why keep his name if you thought he betrayed you?" Anna reached out to touch Clara's cheek. "Because whatever happened between Alex and me, you were still a Montrose. It was your birthright, even if you never knew it. And maybe a part of me hoped he would someday look for us. But he did look," Clara said. "He just told me he tried to find you." Anna nodded, wiping away a fresh tear. "His father told him I had taken money to leave, that I had never really loved him. Alex didn't believe it at first, but when I disappeared so completely, eventually, he thought it must be true. And all this time you've both believed lies about each other." Clara struggled to process the magnitude of the deception. "What about now? Did you tell him about your cancer?" "Yes." Anna's voice grew quieter. "He knows everything now." Clara stood up, pacing the small hospital room. "This is so messed up. That man, Richard, he ruined everything. He kept me from having a father. He made you both suffer for years. And now," she gestured to the hospital room, to the machines monitoring her mother's vital signs. "Now we might not have much time left." "Clara," Anna called her back. "Come here, sweetheart." Clara returned to the bedside, fighting back tears. "I made a terrible mistake," Anna admitted. "I should have trusted what I knew of Alex's character. I should have confronted him directly. But I was young and hurt and scared." "It wasn't your fault," Clara insisted. "It was his father. Richard bears most of the blame, yes. But I had choices too. And the choice I made cost you years with your father." Anna took Clara's hand. "I can't get those years back for you. But I can give you permission to know him now. if that's what you want. Clara thought about the man waiting in the cafeteria, the stranger who was her father, the man who had looked at her with such shock and wonder, the man who, despite everything, had never stopped loving her mother. I think I do want to know him, she said slowly. But what happens now? With everything? That's what Alex and I were discussing. Anna squeezed her hand. He wants to help with my medical bills. He wants to make sure I get the best treatment possible. Can he do that? Will it help? Anna's smile was gentle but resigned. Money can buy better care, but it can't perform miracles, Clara. My cancer is very advanced. But you could get better, right? With the right treatment. Let's focus on today, Anna deflected, a response Clara had grown used to. Alex also wants to be part of your life, but he promised to respect my wishes. We agreed that everything will move at your pace. You decide how much contact you want with him. Clara nodded, relieved not to be pressured. Does his family know about me? Will I have to meet them too? Richard passed away 3 years ago, Anna said quietly. Alex runs the company now. He has a younger sister in California who doesn't involve herself in the business. As for the rest of the family, that's something you and Alex can figure out together, if you choose to. Clara absorbed this information, trying to imagine what it meant to suddenly have family beyond her mother and Aunt Meredith. What about you and him? Are you still? She trailed off, unsure how to phrase the question. Anna shook her head. Too much time has passed, Clara. Too much hurt. We care about each other. We always will. But we're different people now. She hesitated. Alex did tell me he never married. He said he couldn't, not after me. The weight of those lost years hung heavy in the room. All the possibilities that had been stolen from them by lies and manipulation. Clara felt a surge of anger toward a grandfather she would never meet, a man who had shaped her life from the shadows without her even knowing. I should have told you about him sooner, Anna admitted. I just didn't know how, and I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd love him more than me, Anna whispered. Afraid you'd choose his world over ours. Clara threw her arms around her mother, careful of the 4 lines. That would never happen. Never. They held each other, the beeping monitors a constant reminder of how precious their time together was. Finally, Clara pulled back. I think I'd like to talk to him now, she said. Is that okay? Anna nodded. It's more than okay. It's right. Clara stood, but hesitated at the door. Mom, did you ever regret it? Keeping the Montrose name. Her mother smiled, a true smile that reached her eyes. Not for a second. Because every time I looked at you, every time I called your name, I was reminded that something beautiful came from that love. No matter what happened after, no matter what lies were told, you were the truth, Clara Montrose. You always have been. Clara slipped out of the room, her heart full of a strange mix of emotions. Grief for what had been lost, anger at the deception that had shaped her life, but also a tentative hope for what might still be possible. She made her way to the cafeteria, where Alexander, her father, waited. He sat alone at a corner table, staring into a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. When he saw her approaching, he stood quickly, uncertainty written across his features. She told me everything, Clara said, stopping in front of him. About you, about her, about your father. Alexander nodded gravely. I'm so sorry, Clara. If I could go back and change what happened, you can't, she interrupted. None of us can. But my mom says we get to decide what happens now. She took a deep breath. And I think I'd like to get to know my father. The word father hung in the air between them, foreign yet familiar, a title he had earned by biology, but not yet by presence. The path forward wouldn't be simple, but as Clara looked into eyes so similar to her own, she felt something she hadn't expected, recognition. Perhaps some connections ran deeper than time or separation could erase. The cafeteria buzzed with activity, visitors grabbing coffee, staff on quick breaks, patients well enough to leave their rooms. In the corner, Clara sat across from Alexander, both picking at sandwiches neither really wanted to eat. The plastic table between them seemed both too small and impossibly wide. So, Alexander began, setting down his untouched turkey sandwich. Your Aunt Meredith? She's been taking care of you while your mother is here? Clara nodded. She works double shifts at Maple Street Diner. I stay with her, but I'm mostly on my own. Alexander frowned. You're 9. Almost 10, Clara corrected automatically. And I'm good at taking care of myself. I can see that, he said softly, and something in his tone made Clara look up. The admiration in his eyes was unmistakable. but so was the sadness. You shouldn't have had to be. Clara shrugged, uncomfortable with his implied criticism of her life. It's fine. Lots of kids have it worse. That doesn't make it right. He hesitated, then added, I'd like to help, if you'll let me. Mom said you want to pay for her treatment. Alexander nodded. I've already spoken to Dr. Patel. There's a clinical trial at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York that your mother might qualify for. It's experimental, but the preliminary results are promising. Hope flared in Clara's chest. Dangerous, painful hope that she'd long since learned to suppress. You think it could help her? Really help her? I don't want to make promises I can't keep, Alexander said carefully. But yes, I think it's worth trying. The problem is that your mother is resistant to accepting my help. Clara wasn't surprised. Her mother had always been fiercely independent, working 2 jobs before she got sick, never accepting charity even when things were desperate. She's stubborn. A small smile touched Alexander's lips. She always was. It was one of the things I loved most about her. Clara studied him curiously. Do you still love her? Alexander looked startled by the direct question, but he didn't evade it. I think a part of me always will. First loves leave a mark that never completely fades. He glanced toward the cafeteria doors. But we've both changed, and there's a lot of hurt between us. Because of what your dad did. His expression darkened. Yes, my father has a lot to answer for. Unfortunately, he took those answers to his grave. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Richard Montrose's deception hanging over them. I should get back to Mom, Clara finally said, gathering her untouched sandwich and apple. She gets tired easily. Alexander nodded, standing up. Of course. I have some calls to make about the treatment options anyway. Would it be all right if I came back tomorrow? Clara considered this. I think she'd like that. I would too. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. Relief, perhaps, or cautious joy. Thank you, Clara. 2 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Alexander became a fixture at Fairview Medical Center, arriving each afternoon with his laptop, setting up in the corner of Anna's room like he'd always belonged there. He brought real flowers from florists, arrangements that made Clara's wildflower bouquets look shabby by comparison, but Anna always placed Clara's flowers closest to her bed. Dr. Patel now spoke of options instead of palliative care. Tests were ordered, specialists consulted. Anna was transferred to a private room with a window overlooking the hospital gardens. The whispered conversations about cost stopped. Clara continued selling her flowers, though she no longer needed to. It had become a ritual, a connection to the life she'd known before Alexander Montrose walked into it. He never asked her to stop, seeming to understand without being told that she needed this one thing to remain unchanged. The doctors say I qualify for the trial, Anna told Clara one evening. Alexander had just left, promising to return the following morning with the paperwork. We need to go to New York for the treatments. Is that good? Clara asked, hope and fear battling within her. Anna squeezed her daughter's hand. It means there's a chance, sweetheart. A small one, but better than what we had before. She hesitated. It also means some changes for us. Big ones. What kind of changes? Alex has offered us his guest house to stay in while I undergo treatment. It's closer to Memorial Sloan Kettering than Aunt Meredith's place. Clara's eyes widened. His house? You mean live with him? Not exactly with him. The guest house is separate. It has its own entrance, its own little garden. We'd have privacy. Anna watched her daughter's face carefully. What do you think? Clara thought about Aunt Meredith's cramped apartment with the leaky faucet and temperamental heating. She thought about the pull-out couch that served as her bed, the long bus rides to the hospital, the constant worry about money. Would I have my own room? She asked finally. Anna smiled. Alex says yes. And you'd be in the same school district, so you wouldn't have to change schools. Clara considered this. Does he want us there? Very much. Anna's voice softened. Too much, maybe. I've told him not to get his hopes up about me, Clara. The treatment might not work. Don't say that, Clara said sharply. It will work. It has to. Anna pulled her daughter into a gentle embrace. Whatever happens with the treatment, Alex wants to be in your life. He's your father, and he wants the chance to be one to you. But only if that's what you want to. The next day, Clara found Alexander in the hospital cafeteria again, working on his laptop. He looked up when she approached, closing the computer immediately. Clara, he greeted her, that now familiar mix of awkwardness and eagerness in his voice. How's your mom today? Better, I think. The new pain medication is helping. She slid into the chair across from him, suddenly nervous. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you doing all this? The question had been building in her for days. The treatments, the private room, offering your guest house. Why? Alexander looked surprised. Because I care about your mother. And because you're my daughter. But you didn't even know about me 2 weeks ago. No, he agreed. But I know about you now. And I can't unknow it, Clara. I can't go back to a world where you don't exist. Clara fiddled with the plastic salt shaker on the table. What if Mom doesn't get better? What happens to me then? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither wanted to face. Your mother is going to fight this with everything she has, Alexander said carefully. And she'll have the best medical care I can find. But if you're asking what happens to you, he leaned forward. You have a home with me for as long as you want one. Always. No matter what. But you don't even know me, Clara persisted. What if you don't like me? What if I'm not what you expected? A smile touched Alexander's lips. I already like you, Clara. You're brave and loyal and stubborn, all traits I admire. As for expectations, I never expected to have a daughter at all. You're already more than I dared hope for. Something in his words reached past Clara's defenses. Mom says we're moving to your guest house. If that's what you both want, yes. He hesitated. I've had it prepared, but I understand if it's too much, too soon. Clara thought about it, about what it would mean to live so close to this man who was her father in biology, but still a stranger in every other way. I'd like to see it first, she decided. Before we decide. Alexander nodded. Of course. Would you like to go now? I could drive you over, show you around, and have you back here before dinner. Clara glanced at the clock. Her mother would be having tests for the next 2 hours. Okay. 20 minutes later, they were driving through the affluent suburbs outside Hartford. Clara watched the neighborhoods change, houses growing larger, lawns more expansive, until they turned onto a tree-lined drive that wound up a gentle hill. At the top stood a large colonial house, white with black shutters and a wraparound porch. This is where you live? Clara asked, unable to keep the awe from her voice. It's too big for one person, Alexander admitted as they pulled into the circular driveway. I bought it a few years ago thinking. He trailed off. Well, it doesn't matter what I was thinking. Come on, the guest house is around back. They walked along a stone path that curved around the main house. Clara caught glimpses of a swimming pool, a tennis court, gardens meticulously maintained. Then the guest house came into view, a charming cottage with its own small porch, much smaller than the main house, but still larger than any place Clara had ever lived. It has 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, living room, and 1 bathroom, Alexander explained as he unlocked the door. It's been empty since my sister visited last Christmas, but I had it cleaned and stocked yesterday. Clara stepped inside and stood very still, taking it all in. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating hardwood floors and comfortable furniture. Fresh flowers sat on a coffee table. Through an open door, she could see a bedroom with a window seat and bookshelves. Is that your room, if you want it? Alexander confirmed. I wasn't sure what colors you like, so I kept it neutral, but we can change anything you don't like. Clara walked into the bedroom, running her hand over the soft blue comforter on the bed, a real bed, not a pull-out couch. The bookshelves held a variety of titles for her age group. On the desk sat a new laptop with a bow on top. This is all for me. Her voice sounded small even to her own ears. Alexander leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a careful expression. Is it too much? Clara thought about the question. Was it too much? This beautiful room, the comfortable house, the father she never knew she had, all of it appearing in her life like magic just when everything seemed darkest. I don't know, she admitted. It doesn't feel real. It's a lot to take in, Alexander acknowledged. And you don't have to decide anything today. The house will be here whenever you and your mother are ready. Clara turned to face him. What if she never gets better? What if the treatments don't work? Alexander's expression grew solemn. Then we'll face that together, Clara. One day at a time. It was the same answer her mother always gave, but somehow hearing it from him made it feel like a promise rather than an evasion. She nodded, accepting his words as the most honest answer he could give. I think Mom would like it here, she said finally. It's quiet. She needs quiet for the headaches. I know. Alexander's voice softened. I remember how she used to get migraines even back then. Light and noise would make them worse. The casual mention of a time when he knew her mother intimately, knew her habits, her pains, her preferences, struck Clara anew. These two people had loved each other once, had planned a future together, and might have raised her together if not for the cruel interference of a man she would never meet. "I need to get back to the hospital," she said suddenly, the weight of all these revelations becoming too much. Alexander nodded immediately. "Of course, we can come back anytime." As they drove back toward Fairview Medical Center, Clara watched her father's profile against the setting sun. His hands gripped the steering wheel firmly, his posture straight but not tense. Everything about him spoke of control, of capability. He was a man used to fixing problems, to making things happen through sheer force of will and resources. But some things couldn't be fixed with money or determination. Her mother's cancer might be one of them. "Thank you," she said as they pulled into the hospital parking lot. "For showing me the house. For everything." Alexander turned to look at her, his expression unguarded for once. "You don't need to thank me, Clara. I'm your father. This is what fathers are supposed to do." It was the first time he'd stated their relationship so directly, so simply. Clara nodded, accepting the words and all they implied about the future. A future that had suddenly expanded beyond the hospital corridors and Aunt Meredith's apartment, beyond the fear that had been her constant companion for months. 3 days later, Anna Montrose was discharged from Fairview Medical Center. Alexander drove them both to the guest house, Clara sitting in the back seat beside her mother, who looked both fragile and determined in the afternoon light. As they pulled up the driveway, Anna reached for Clara's hand. "It's going to be okay," she whispered. Somehow, Clara squeezed her mother's hand, watching Alexander get out to open the car door for them. "I know," she replied, and for the first time in months, she almost believed it. Life at the guest house settled into a routine that still felt surreal to Clara. Each morning, Alexander would drive her to school before heading to his office in Hartford. In the afternoons, Marta, the kind-faced housekeeper who managed both the main house and guest house, would pick Clara up and bring her home. Twice a week, Anna would travel to New York for treatments, Alexander insisting on driving them himself despite offers to hire a car service. "It gives me an excuse to get out of board meetings," he joked, though Clara noticed how he arranged his schedule around these appointments, never once suggesting they were an inconvenience. May turned to June, and school ended for the summer. Clara found herself with days that stretched empty before her, time she would have once spent selling flowers or sitting beside her mother's hospital bed. Now, Anna rested in the comfortable bedroom of the guest house, her strength gradually returning as the treatments continued. Alexander maintained a careful distance, present but never intrusive. He never entered the guest house without knocking, never made decisions about Clara's life without consulting Anna first. He was, Clara realized, trying to earn his place in their lives rather than claiming it as a right. One hot afternoon in July, Clara sat on the edge of the pool, dangling her feet in the cool water. She hadn't yet worked up the courage to actually swim. She'd never learned how, but the relief from the heat was welcome. From her vantage point, she could see into the main house where Alexander sat at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing as he spoke to someone on the other end. She'd been living in his orbit for nearly 2 months now, watching him, learning his habits and patterns. He rose early, exercised in the home gym before showering and making coffee. He worked late most nights, but always emerged from his office when Clara and Anna ate dinner on the patio, joining them as if by coincidence. He asked about her day with genuine interest, never pushing when she gave short answers, but lighting up when she shared more. "He's trying not to overwhelm you," Anna had explained one night after he'd retreated to his office. "He's afraid of pushing too hard and losing the little bit of trust you've given him." Clara wasn't sure what to do with that information. She wasn't used to adults being so careful with her feelings, so attentive to her comfort. It made her simultaneously wary and hopeful. A shadow fell across the pool, and Clara looked up to find Alexander standing there, his suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up against the heat. "Mind some company?" he asked. Clara shrugged, which he correctly interpreted as permission. He sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them, and slipped off his leather shoes before rolling up his pants legs and putting his feet in the water. "How's Mom today?" he asked. It was always his first question. "Better, I think." She ate all her lunch and then worked on her laptop for a while. Clara swished her feet, creating ripples that spread across the pool's surface. Dr. Feldman called. He said her blood work looks promising. Alexander nodded, relief evident in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. That's good. Very good. They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching dragonflies skim across the water. I never learned to swim, Clara said suddenly. Alexander glanced at her, surprised by the volunteered information. Would you like to? She considered the question. Maybe. It looks nice when you do it in the mornings. He smiled, clearly pleased she'd noticed his morning swims. It's peaceful. Helps me think. He hesitated. I could teach you, if you wanted. Or we could find an instructor if you prefer. You could teach me, Clara decided. If you have time. I always have time for you, Clara. The simple sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. How about we start tomorrow morning? The water's warmest then. Clara nodded, suddenly shy. Okay. Another silence fell between them, but there was a different quality to it now, anticipatory rather than awkward. Can I ask you something? Clara finally said. Of course. What was Mom like? Before everything happened. Alexander's expression softened with memory. She was luminous. That's the word that always came to mind. She lit up every room she entered, not by being loud or demanding attention, but by being so genuinely herself. He smiled. She laughed a lot. She had this way of making everyone around her feel special, like they were the only person who mattered in that moment. She's still like that, Clara said. Even in the hospital, all the nurses loved her. I'm not surprised. He looked toward the guest house. She was also stubborn, determined. When she set her mind to something, nothing could stop her. His smile turned wry. I see a lot of that in you. Really? Absolutely. The way you took care of her all those months, selling flowers, managing on your own. Most adults wouldn't have that kind of resilience. Clara felt a flush of pride at his words. I didn't have a choice. We always have choices, Clara. Yours was to be brave. He glanced at her. I wish I had been there to help you. To help both of you. It wasn't your fault, Clara said, surprising herself with the certainty she felt. 2 months ago, she'd been full of resentment toward this absent father. Now, having witnessed his devotion to her mother's recovery, his patient efforts to connect with her, she couldn't maintain that anger. Thank you for saying that, Alexander replied quietly. But I still wish things had been different. Clara trailed her fingers through the water, considering. Do you think we would have been happy? If your dad hadn't interfered? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, giving the question the consideration it deserved. I'd like to think so, he finally said. I loved your mother very much, and I would have loved you from the moment I knew about you. He sighed. But life is complicated, Clara. We'll never know for sure what might have happened. Mom says you never got married. He looked startled by the observation. No, I didn't. Because of her? Partly, he admitted. I dated, of course. Even came close to engagement once. But it never felt right. He shrugged. My father thought I was being stubborn. Maybe I was. And now? How do you feel about her now? Alexander gazed across the pool toward the guest house. Your mother is one of the strongest, most remarkable people I've ever known. Watching her fight this illness, seeing how she protected and raised you, my admiration for her has only grown. He turned to Clara with a gentle smile. But if you're asking if we'll get back together, I don't think that's in the cards, Clara. Too much time has passed. We're different people now. Clara nodded, oddly relieved by his honesty. But you'll still help her? Even if she doesn't. Even if you don't. Always, he said firmly. I will always be there for your mother. And for you, regardless of any other relationship between us. That's a promise. Clara believed him. Over the past 2 months, Alexander Montrose had proven himself a man of his word. He didn't make grand gestures or empty promises. He simply showed up, day after day, doing whatever needed to be done. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket. I've been waiting for the right moment. He pulled out a small velvet box and offered it to her. Clara took it hesitantly, opening it to find a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny silver flower with a small diamond at its center. It's beautiful, she whispered. It belonged to my grandmother, Alexander explained. My father's mother, actually. She was nothing like him. She was kind, generous. She would have adored you. He smiled softly. The flower seemed appropriate, given how we met. Clara lifted the bracelet from the box, turning it so the diamond caught the sunlight. "Thank you. May I?" Alexander held out his hand, and when she nodded, he carefully fastened the bracelet around her wrist. Perfect fit. Clara examined it on her arm, this tangible connection to a family history she was only beginning to discover. "Mom's getting better, isn't she?" she asked suddenly, needing his reassurance. "The treatments are working." Alexander's expression grew serious. "The doctors are cautiously optimistic. The tumor has shrunk significantly, and her blood work is improving. But cancer is unpredictable, Clara. We have to take it one day at a time. But you think she'll be okay?" He hesitated, clearly weighing his desire to comfort her against his commitment to honesty. "I think your mother is getting the best possible care, and she's responding well. That's all any of us can ask for right now." Clara appreciated that he didn't offer false guarantees. In her 9, almost 10 years, she'd had enough adults lie to her with good intentions. "Whatever happens," Alexander continued, "you're not alone anymore. I know I can't replace the years we lost, and I'm not trying to. But I'm here now, Clara, for as long as you want me to be." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten unexpectedly. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They sat in silence as the sun began to set, painting the pool water in shades of gold and pink. From the guest house, Clara could hear her mother's voice as she spoke on the phone. Normal, everyday sounds that had once seemed impossible during those dark days in the hospital. "Time for dinner," Alexander said eventually, pulling his feet from the water. "Marta made her famous lasagna tonight. Your mother mentioned it was one of your favorites." Clara smiled, touched that he'd remembered this detail. "It is." As they walked back toward the houses, the main house where Alexander lived alone with his memories, and the guest house where Clara and her mother were building a new kind of future, Clara felt the weight of the silver bracelet on her wrist. It was strange how quickly life could change, how a chance encounter in a hospital corridor could rewrite an entire story. "Alexander," she said, using his full name as she always did, not yet comfortable with Dad or even Alex. He paused, looking down at her with a raised eyebrow. "Yes. The swimming lessons. Can we start tomorrow?" His smile was warm, hopeful. "Absolutely. 7 o'clock too early." Clara shook her head. 7 is perfect." He nodded, clearly pleased. It was a small step, this agreement to share an activity, to allow him to teach her something. But in the complicated rebuilding of their fractured family, every small step mattered. Autumn painted the Connecticut landscape in brilliant reds and golds as Clara celebrated her 10th birthday. Alexander transformed the backyard into a carnival, complete with games, a cotton candy machine, and a small Ferris wheel that made Aunt Meredith clutch her chest in mock terror with each rotation. Clara invited her entire class. Children who had once whispered about her secondhand clothes now lined up for cake in her backyard. The irony wasn't lost on her. For years, she'd been the girl people pitied, the one with the sick mother, the absent father, the financial struggles. Now those same people looked at her with envy, not knowing that she would trade all the cotton candy and Ferris wheel rides in the world to ensure her mother's recovery. Anna watched the festivities from a cushioned chair on the patio, a blanket across her lap despite the mild October day. The treatments had taken their toll. Her hair was growing back in sparse patches, and she tired easily, but her eyes were bright as she observed her daughter laughing with friends. "She seems happy," Alexander said, taking the seat next to Anna. "She is, I think." Anna adjusted her headscarf. "You've given her stability when she needed it most." "We both have." He passed her a cup of tea. "The doctors called this morning." Anna's fingers tightened around the cup. "And the latest scans show continued improvement. Dr. Feldman says you're responding better than they anticipated." A careful smile spread across Anna's face. "That's good news." "It's excellent news," Alexander corrected gently. "You're beating this, Anna. One day at a time, just like you always said." She nodded, her gaze drifting back to Clara, who was currently trying to dunk Alexander's assistant in a water tank. "I need to be sure she'll be okay, Alex. No matter what happens." "She will be," he promised. "But so will you." "I'm not giving up on either scenario." Their relationship had evolved over the months, not romantic, but something deeper than friendship. They were co-parents now, bound by their love for Clara and the shared history that had shaped them both. Later that night, after the last guest had gone and Clara had fallen asleep surrounded by new presents, Anna found Alexander in his study, reviewing medical journals. "Still working?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. He looked up, closing the laptop. "Just reading some research on your treatment protocol. There's a new paper from Johns Hopkins that looks promising." Anna shook her head, fond exasperation in her expression. "You can't fix everything by researching it to death, Alex." "I can try," he replied with a wry smile. She entered the room, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. "We need to talk about Clara." Alexander tensed slightly. "Is everything all right? She asked me last night if she could call you Dad." His breath caught audibly. "What did you tell her?" "That she should ask you." Anna tilted her head. "She's afraid you'll think it's too soon." Alexander leaned back in his chair, emotion playing across his features. "It's not too soon. Not for me. I thought you'd say that." Anna smiled softly. "You've been good with her, Alex. Patient. You haven't pushed." "I've been trying to follow your lead," he admitted. "You know her better than anyone." "Maybe, but she's your daughter too. And I think—" Anna paused, gathering her thoughts. "I think it's time we made that more official." Alexander frowned. "What do you mean?" "I want you to petition for legal recognition of paternity," Anna said firmly. "I want Clara to have your name, officially, legally, and all the rights and protections that come with it." Alexander stared at her. "Anna, are you sure? You've been so protective of her, so careful about my involvement." "Because I needed to be sure of your intentions," she replied. "I needed to know you weren't just swept up in the novelty of discovering you had a daughter, that you wouldn't lose interest or walk away when things got difficult." "I would never." "I know that now," Anna interrupted gently. "I've watched you with her these past months. I've seen how you look at her, the same way I do. Like she's the most precious thing in your world." Alexander's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "She is." "Then make it official. For all our sakes." The process moved quickly with Alexander's resources and connections. By Thanksgiving, Clara legally became Clara Elizabeth Montrose, with Alexander officially recognized as her father. They celebrated with a quiet dinner at the main house, just the three of them and Aunt Meredith. "Does this mean I'm rich now?" Clara asked with typical directness as Alexander carved the turkey. Meredith choked on her wine while Anna tried to hide a smile. "Clara," she admonished gently. Alexander laughed. "It means you're my daughter in the eyes of the law, as well as in my heart. And yes, it does mean you have certain financial protections." He winked at her. "But you'll still have to do your homework." Winter arrived with heavy snowfall that transformed the property into a wonderland. Clara, having never lived anywhere with so much open space, discovered the joy of sledding down the hill behind the house and building elaborate snow forts with Alexander's enthusiastic help. Anna continued her treatments, the trips to New York becoming less frequent as her condition stabilized. There were good days and bad days, but the good began to outnumber the bad. One evening in February, Clara sat at the kitchen table in the main house, struggling with math homework while Alexander prepared dinner, a skill he'd been determined to master after years of takeout and restaurant meals. "I don't get this," Clara groaned, pushing the textbook away. "Fractions are stupid." Alexander wiped his hands on a dish towel and came to look over her shoulder. "Fractions can be tricky," he agreed. "Let's break it down." He pulled up a chair beside her, patiently working through the problems, using pasta pieces from their dinner prep to illustrate the concepts. Clara watched his hands, strong, capable hands that signed business deals and chopped vegetables, and steadied her in the pool during swimming lessons. "Better?" he asked when they'd completed the worksheet. Clara nodded. "Thanks, Dad." The word still felt new in her mouth, but less foreign each time she used it. She saw the flicker of joy that crossed his face whenever she said it, though he tried to maintain his composure. "Anytime, kiddo." He ruffled her hair gently before returning to the stove. Clara gathered her homework, thinking about how much had changed in less than a year. Last February, she'd been selling flowers in a hospital corridor, worried sick about her mother, with no idea that her father was out there searching for a family he didn't know existed. "Dad," she said suddenly, "are you glad you found us?" Alexander turned from the stove, his expression serious. "Finding you and your mother was the best thing that ever happened to me, Clara. Even with all the difficult parts, your mom's illness, the lost years, I wouldn't trade knowing you for anything." Clara believed him. He showed it every day in 100 small ways, making her lunch for school, attending parent-teacher conferences, sitting up with her when nightmares woke her. The man who had once been a stranger in an expensive suit had become simply Dad, the person she counted on most after her mother. Spring arrived with cautious optimism. Anna completed her final round of treatment in April, and preliminary scans showed no evidence of disease. The doctors used terms like remission and remarkable response, while still emphasizing the need for vigilance and regular monitoring. "We're not out of the woods," Dr. Feldman told them during Anna's follow-up appointment. "But we're on a good path. A very good path." On a warm Saturday in May, almost exactly 1 year since that fateful encounter in the hospital corridor, Alexander suggested they picnic by the small pond at the far end of the property. Clara helped pack sandwiches and fruit, while Anna, her strength steadily returning, prepared a batch of her famous lemonade. They spread a blanket beneath a flowering dogwood tree, the white petals occasionally drifting down around them like summer snow. Anna looked more like her old self than she had in months, her hair growing back in soft waves, her cheeks showing color that owed nothing to illness or fever. "I have news," Alexander said as they finished their lunch. He seemed uncharacteristically nervous, fidgeting with his napkin. "I've been offered a position with the board of Memorial Sloan Kettering. They're expanding their research division, focusing on the type of treatment that helped Anna." "That's wonderful," Anna said. "You'd be perfect for that role." "It would mean some changes," he continued. "The position is based in New York. I need to be there at least 3 days a week." Clara's stomach dropped. "You're moving away?" "Well, that's what I wanted to discuss with both of you." He looked between them. "I thought perhaps we all might consider relocating." "Not immediately," he added quickly, seeing their expressions. "But maybe by fall, when the new school year starts." "New York City?" Clara's mind raced with images of skyscrapers and crowded streets, so different from the quiet Connecticut suburb she'd come to call home. "I have an apartment there," Alexander explained. "It's in a good school district, and the medical follow-up would be more convenient for your mom." Anna was watching him carefully. "Is this about the job, Alex? Or is it something else?" He sighed, always transparent to her. "Partly the job. It's a good opportunity to help fund research that could help others like you." He paused. "But yes, there's more to it. This house, it has too many memories of my father, of the lies he told, the years he stole from us." He looked around at the manicured grounds. "Sometimes I feel like his shadow still falls over everything here." Clara understood suddenly. This beautiful property, for all its comforts, was still tied to the man who had nearly destroyed their family before it could begin. She thought about her room in the guest house, the swimming pool where she'd learned to swim, the hill where she'd gone sledding. She'd miss it all, but none of it was what truly mattered. "I think we should go," she said decisively. Both adults looked at her in surprise. "You do?" Alexander asked. Clara nodded. "Fresh start, right? For all of us." She turned to her mother. "What do you think, Mom?" Anna's expression was thoughtful. I think I'd like to see this apartment before deciding. But I'm not opposed to the idea." She smiled at Alexander. "And I agree about the shadows. Maybe it's time we all stepped into the light." Something shifted in that moment. A final letting go of the past, a turning toward a future none of them could have imagined a year ago. They were no longer 3 separate individuals cautiously orbiting each other, but a family unit, making decisions together. As summer progressed, they made several trips to New York, exploring the apartment, which Clara pronounced awesome due to its proximity to Central Park and the surrounding neighborhood. Anna met with her medical team to arrange for continued monitoring in the city. Alexander organized the transfer of his primary business operations. In August, they put the Connecticut property on the market, keeping only a few meaningful items and photographs. Clara wasn't sad to say goodbye to the place. It had been a way station, a healing ground, but not truly home. On her first day at her new school in Manhattan, Clara stood nervously in front of the imposing building, other students streaming past her through the doors. "You've got this," Anna assured her, straightening Clara's collar. "Just be yourself. And call if you need anything," Alexander added, checking his watch. "I can be here in 15 minutes from the office." Clara rolled her eyes at their hovering, but secretly appreciated it. "I'll be fine. Go to work, Dad. Mom, go to your doctor's appointment. I promise not to set the school on fire on my first day." Alexander laughed, pulling her into a quick hug. "That's my girl. Bold as brass." The phrase made Anna smile. "Just like her father," she murmured, and the look that passed between her parents gave Clara a curious feeling of hope. Though they insisted their relationship remained firmly in the co-parenting realm, she'd noticed subtle changes over the summer. Lingering glances, private conversations that stopped when she entered a room, and ease between them that hadn't existed before. "Go on, both of you," Clara insisted. "I mean it." With final hugs and reassurances, her parents finally left. Clara watched them walk away together, Anna's arm linked through Alexander's in a gesture that had become familiar. As Clara turned to enter her new school, she caught sight of a small cluster of wildflowers growing improbably through a crack in the concrete sidewalk. She bent down, touching a purple petal gently, remembering the newspaper-wrapped bouquets that had changed everything. Some people might call it luck or coincidence, that Alexander had stepped off that elevator on that particular rainy afternoon, that she had spoken those particular words, that her name had triggered his memory and altered the course of all their lives. But Clara preferred to think of it as something else, something more like destiny. She straightened, adjusted her backpack, and walked confidently into her new school. Behind her, the wildflowers continued their determined growth, pushing through concrete to find the sun, small but persistent, just like the hope that had brought her family full circle. 3 years later, on a crisp fall morning, Clara stood in the kitchen of their Manhattan apartment, putting the finishing touches on a bouquet of flowers. Not wildflowers this time, but carefully selected blooms from the florist down the street. "Are those for today?" Anna asked, entering the kitchen in a blue dress that complemented her now healthy glow. "Yeah," Clara said, fussing with the arrangement. "Do you think they're okay?" Anna smiled, touching the petals. "They're perfect. He'll love them." Clara nodded, relieved. At 13, she still sought her mother's approval, though in different ways than before. "Is he nervous?" Terrified, Anna laughed. "He called me at midnight to make sure I hadn't changed my mind." Clara grinned. "As if you would, after all this time." It had taken 3 years of healing, physical for Anna, emotional for all of them, before her parents had finally admitted what Clara had suspected since that day by the pond. Their love had never truly died. It had simply been buried beneath layers of misunderstanding and lost time. Alexander appeared in the doorway, handsome in his dark suit, his expression a mix of joy and anxiety that made Clara laugh. "You look like you're facing a firing squad, not getting married," she teased. "Your father has always been dramatic about the important things," Anna said, crossing to straighten his already perfect tie. Alexander caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Can you blame me? I lost you once. I'm not taking any chances this time." Clara watched them. These two people who had found their way back to each other despite everything that had tried to keep them apart. Their wedding would be small, just family and close friends gathering at the Bow Bridge in Central Park where Alexander had proposed on a snowy evening last Christmas. "Here," Clara said, offering him the bouquet she'd arranged. "For Mom." Alexander took the flowers, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Thank you, sweetheart. Just don't drop them," she warned. "I worked hard on that." He laughed, the tension easing from his shoulders. "I wouldn't dare. Not after seeing what you can accomplish with a bunch of flowers." Clara smiled, understanding the reference to those hospital corridor days that now seemed like another lifetime. So much had changed since then. Her mother healthy again, her father fully present in her life, their family whole in a way she'd never dared dream possible. As they left the apartment together, mother, father, daughter, Clara thought about the journey that had brought them here. The path hadn't been straight or easy. There had been setbacks in her mother's treatment, arguments as they all adjusted to their new reality, moments of doubt and fear. But through it all, one thing had remained constant. The love that connected them, stronger than lies, stronger than time, stronger even than the cancer that had threatened to take her mother away. "Ready?" Alexander asked, offering an arm to each of them. Clara linked her arm through his, feeling the reassuring solidity of his presence. "Ready." They stepped into the autumn sunshine together, moving forward as they had learned to do, one day at a time, side by side, a family restored.